Coming up next, 11 things you might not know about Led Zeppelin. I heard it on the X. Please hit like and subscribe. Number 11. Immigrant Song, Behind the Song. It's hard to say exactly when heavy metal was invented. There were plenty of predecessors and contemporaries who could make equal claims to the crown. Most examples are one-offs. The Beatles creating a single discordant freak-out on Helter Skelter. The otherwise flower power psychedelic groups like Iron Butterfly on In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida. And The Who's Summertime Blues. Or how about Steppenwolf pioneering the phrase heavy metal in relation to motorcycle culture on Born to Be Wild? However, despite all of these contributions, no band was playing harder, faster, and louder than Led Zeppelin. The group's string of shows began in Reykjavik, Iceland, of which Plant said in the 1994 book, Led Zeppelin, "We weren't being pompous. We did come from the land of the ice and snow." We were invited to play a concert in Iceland, and the day before we arrived, all the civil servants went on strike and the gig was going to be canceled. The university prepared a concert hall for us and it was phenomenal. The response from the kids was remarkable and we had a great time.
The hammer of the gods will drive our ships to new lands, because there we were. We got off a plane and we were given Iceland on a plate.
Immigrant Song was about that trip, and it was the opening track on the album that was intended to be incredibly different. When the band hopped over to Headley Grange to record Led Zeppelin III, the result was lighter tracks like Tangerine, Friends, and That's the Way. Ironically, the recording would also produce the band's heaviest song to date. For Led Zeppelin, getting heavy was never a problem. The opening song on their first album, Good Times, Bad Times, is a prime example. Tracks like Communication Breakdown and Whole Lotta Love were louder and heavier than their contemporaries, but they still needed to kick it up a notch for Immigrant Song. That's when John Bonham stumbled upon the galloping drum pattern that drives the song. Bonham's right foot is legendary, and his consistently ferocious bass drum stomp on this track rivals any of his flashier footwork on Good Times, Bad Times, or Rock and Roll. With Bonham's bashing percussion, the song hinges on the repetitive guitar riff for Jimmy Page. It's a heartbeat, a war chant, and a collective one at that. In Norse mythology, which Plant references in Immigrant Song, there is the thunder god Thor and other beings you've likely vaguely heard of. There is also the concept of Valhalla, where the god Odin rules. Half of those who die in battle go to Valhalla. Of course, the belief system is much more complicated, but that's the source text from which Plant gets his concepts for this 1970 hit. Plant sings as if on a battleship, preparing his fellow troops for war. We come from the land of the ice and snow, from the midnight sun where the hot springs flow. The hammer of the gods will drive our ships to new lands to fight the horde, sing and cry. Number 10. Houses of the Holy, Behind the Cover. The story of this astonishing design begins in 1972, when Led Zeppelin, at the height of its creative powers, commissioned the Hypnosis team, led by Storm Thorgerson and Aubrey Powell, to design the cover for the band's new album. Jimmy's first meeting with Thorgerson didn't go well. According to Page, the designer proposed a cover of a tennis racket and spieled his layout of ideas on the table. "Racket, don't you get it?" Jimmy's response was, "Are you trying to imply that our music is a racket?" Thorgerson was shown the door. He had some balls. Imagine, on a first meeting with a client. After having ruled out that racket concept, Zeppelin opted for a cover, inspired by the novel Childhood's End by Arthur C. Clarke. It was the result of a collage of several photographs taken at Giant's Causeway, Northern Ireland, by Aubrey Powell of Hypnosis. Zeppelin was sold on the idea of a naked family painted with silver and gold makeup. photographed at a remote, mystical, sun-kissed rock formation. In a 2008 interview, one of the two models on the cover, Stephen Gates, speaks about the iconic image.
You are on the cover of a Led Zeppelin album, is this right?
Yes. Most people in the country will have seen my bare bottom at some point.
Which one is it?
It's Houses of the Holy. Yeah, this is me and my sister, and all of those children are myself and my sister. It's a multiple exposure shot. With them, as I say, I'm sort of quite. It's one of those weird things. It's a very apocalyptic image. There's these sort of naked, silvery children going up the Giant's Causeway in Ireland.
I think that's one of the most amazing rock album covers of all time.
And there were apparently lots of adults there as well, but because it was raining, they wouldn't take their clothes off. Whereas me and Sam went, yeah, brilliant, and ran up the Giant's Causeway. And they took it. It happened over a week, and that's what came of it.
Stephen Gates, decades later, got to hear from Aubrey Powell about that iconic photo in a radio documentary.
Every morning we had to get up at about 5 o'clock, and both you and Sam had to be made up in gold and silver. Now, the third day, we ran out of makeup. We set off to find something else to use, and Tom Smith came back to me and said, the only thing I can find is spray paint, car spray paint. We got up the next morning and sprayed everybody with car spray paint. And then your mother asked why it wasn't coming off in the bath.
With the work done and approved, there was a printing error, and it came out under reddish colors that gave the cover a more interesting aspect, since the result until that moment did not finish either to please. For its sheer audacity and beauty, the cover of Houses of the Holy would become one of the most iconic album covers of all time. From No Racket to No Quarter. Number 9. Led Zeppelin meets Elvis. Musical giants Led Zeppelin and Elvis Presley encountered each other 3 times. The first meeting took place at the Forum in Los Angeles in May 1974. Led Zeppelin were in town to attend a launch party for their record label, Swan Song, and attended Elvis's Forum show the following night.
Huge place, JD. It's a long way from the auditorium in Memphis, you know. If we could start together, fellas, because we got Led Zeppelin out there and Jimmy Darren and a whole bunch of people, and let's try to look like we know what we're doing. What are we doing? Now, what we're doing.
After the show, Jimmy Page told Elvis that on the rare occasions when Zeppelin would soundcheck, Robert Plant liked to sing Elvis songs. When Elvis heard that, he turned to Plant and asked him which song was his favorite to sing. Robert replied with, "Love Me." Later, as Elvis was walking out the door to leave, he turned back and looked at Plant and began belting out his song, "Love Me." Plant joined in on the singing, and they sang the rest of the song together. Robert Plant and Led Zeppelin. Recall that first encounter with Elvis on Late Night with David Letterman in 2012.
And the king, Elvis, we met him, the 3 of us, 4 of us.
Now, how was that in terms of personalities?
Well, he had a lot of chicks. He got something going on, but...
So you had that in common with Elvis, a lot of chicks.
On their third encounter, it was at the Washington-Baltimore airport. Elvis and Zeppelin were playing in the D.C. area. Elvis arrived on the Lisa Marie, Presley's private jet, and Led Zeppelin arrived on their Caesar's chariot. It was one heck of a sight to see these 2 private jets sitting side by side on the tarmac. David Stanley, who is Elvis's stepbrother and bodyguard, recalled that event. I asked Elvis if I could go with Zeppelin that night for their concert. He said no. When I asked him why, he said, "Look at the bottom of your paycheck." Speaking of Elvis, or in this case singing, here's Robert Plant on The Late Late Show in 2018, recalling when he once went head-to-head with a Taiwan man in China, singing Elvis songs.
So we went to a karaoke night. Yeah. And the options were, I wanted to sing, okay, and I'd had too much to drink, so I thought, ABBA? No. And there was Elvis, so I said, okay, I'll put my name down. And a bloke from Taiwan put his name down for Elvis. Right. So we were competing.
Oh, it's on.
Oh, yeah, wow. Yeah. So I'm doing all my bit, you know, a man of a certain age, you know. I was neck and neck with this guy, but all the time the Chinese were going for the Taiwanese guy, and I was really, really good. in Beijing 22 years ago, I was beaten by a Taiwanese Elvis impersonator.
Well, let me tell you this.
Worst things have happened to me.
We've found that impersonator, and he's here tonight, ladies and gentlemen. I'm joking. Stick around while with these two.
Number 8. Led Zeppelin, Behind the Symbols. The 4 symbols were first introduced to the rock media via a series of teaser adverts placed on billboards and in the music papers weeks leading up to the album's release in late 1971. After all the crap that we'd had with the critics, I put it to everybody else that it'd be a good idea to put out something totally anonymous, Jimmy Page remembers. At first, I wanted just one symbol on it, but then it was decided that since it was our 4th album and there were 4 of us, we could each choose our own symbol. The symbols for John Paul Jones is a single intersecting circle, said to symbolize a person who possesses both confidence and competence. John Bonham's 3 interlocking rings is said to represent the triad of mother, father, and child. It could be interpreted as a drum kit as well. It was also, somewhat appropriately given the late drummer's penchant for alcoholic beverages, the logo for Ballantine beer. Robert Plant's symbol was apparently his own design, though it can also be traced to a book titled The Sacred Symbols of Mu by James Churchward. The feather in the circle represents the feather of Ma'at, the Egyptian goddess of justice and fairness, and is the emblem of a writer. The feather is a symbol on which all sorts of philosophies have been based, noted Plant. Jimmy's symbol is often referred to as Zoso, and there have been various theories put forward surrounding its origin. Some point to it being used as early as 1557 in representing Saturn. This is right in line for Page, as his astrological sign is Capricorn, which is ruled by Saturn. When Jimmy was around 15, his parents bought for him a 1959 Futurama Grazioso. One of the Saturn symbols in the textbooks looks a little bit like Zoso of Grazioso. My symbol was about invoking and being invocative, Page told Classic Rock's Mick Wall in 2001, adding, "That's all I'm going to say about it." Whatever their meaning, these symbols have become synonymous with each member of Led Zeppelin. John Bonham's choice for his symbol was 3 interlocking rings. He easily could have went with 4 sticks. Number 7. Led Zeppelin, Behind the Name. Eager to press the boundaries of the British blues revival, it was Page who took the crumbling Yardbirds and put together a new lineup. John Paul Jones on bass and keyboards was an obvious choice for the band. Jones was a well-respected session musician in England at the time. Though Page wanted Terry Reid to front the new band, Reid was unavailable and suggested Band of Joy frontman Robert Plant for the job. Plant eventually agreed to join and brought John Bonham on drums, along from his previous project. Billed as the new Yardbirds, the quartet was assembled as a means of fulfilling tour contracts put together by Jimmy Page's then main band. The new band recorded their debut album based on their recently completed tour of Scandinavia. Prior to its release, guitarist Chris Drea of the Yardbirds issued a cease and desist letter forcing the band to come up with a new name. The origin of the band's name started when Jimmy Page, Jeff Beck, and The Who's Keith Moon and John Entwistle were discussing the idea of Jimmy forming a new group. Moon joked, "It would probably go over like a lead balloon," and Entwistle allegedly replied, "A Led Zeppelin." Intrigued, Page thought instead of balloon, a Zeppelin represented the perfect balance of heavy and light, combustibility, and grace. Band manager Peter Grant suggested the spelling LED to avoid mispronunciation. With the new name in tow, in time for the release of their debut album, Led Zeppelin not only got off the ground, but the band would ascend to legendary heights as one of the greatest in rock history. Number 6. Jamaica.
Come on, man.
Dire Maker. I don't, Jamaica? The title, frequently mispronounced as Dear Maker, or even Dire Maker, is actually meant to be pronounced Jamaica, in a double-edged reference to the old joke that Robert Plant regaled in a Rolling Stone interview, and also the way in which locals pronounce the name of their Caribbean island. In that 2005 interview, Plant discussed the different interpretations and pronunciations of the name of the song. He explained that the title is derived from an old joke, where two friends have the following exchange. My wife's gone to the West Indies.
Jamaica?
Which in an English accent sounds like, did you make her? No, she wanted to go. The title, which does not appear in the lyrics, was chosen because it reflects the reggae feel of the song, and as an example of the Led Zeppelin band members' senses of humor. Naturally, such a dramatic sound change for the band, heavily reliant on studio techniques, proved impossible to recreate on stage, and the band never played it live. I got one more thing. Did you make her? Please hit like and subscribe. Number 5. Led Zeppelin-Untitled. Led Zeppelin released their fourth album on November 8, 1971. In response to the treatment the band had received from critics, the band decided to release the album with no title. It is variously referred to as Led Zeppelin IV, Untitled, Four Symbols, Zoso, or Runes. Their previous album, Led Zeppelin III, was highly anticipated and topped the chart, but critics received it with mixed and unfavorable reviews. To follow Led Zeppelin III, the band wanted to detach their name from the album, so with the new release there wasn't a title or track listing. There wasn't anything that was tied to Led Zeppelin. Along with the lack of information on the record, the band chose 4 symbols that represented each of them as members, which were included on the inner jacket of the record. Needless to say, the album was a hit. But what is and what should never be? Number 4. Hot Dog Behind the Song. This rambunctious track from 1979's In Through the Outdoor, Hot Dog, grew out of the band's pre-production rehearsals, where they warmed up by playing a series of old Elvis Presley and Ricky Nelson covers. The lyrics are about a girl in Texas who took my heart, may have been based on a real woman in Plant's life, but he called this a tribute to Texas and the state of mind of the people who live there. The song said to be inspired by Audrey Hamilton, Plant's road wife who was from Texas. Robert wrote about their spring fling, including the lyric, I took her love at 17. But this is inaccurate, and Audrey later confirmed, the song is indeed about her, but stating she was actually 20 at the time. Despite not being the big hit, Hot Dog is a fun, rocking tune with a kick. From Black Dog to Hot Dog. Number 3. The Fifth Zeppelin. It makes sense that a band as talented as Led Zeppelin would rarely enlist outside collaborators, but on their untitled fourth album, the quartet broke tradition and recruited singer-songwriter Sandy Denny to record the only vocal duet in their catalog, the power folk ballad. The Battle of Evermore. In Evermore, Plant sings of a Queen of Light and Prince of Peace, embroiled in an epic battle against the dark. As Plant narrates the battle, Denny, a member of the British folk rock band Fairport Convention, serves as the town crier, interjecting in her haunting croon, "Dance in the dark of night, sing to the morning light." Plant explained on his Digging Deep podcast in 2019 that the song has 2 parts of the story. Plant said his attempts to sing both parts of the song didn't sound right in one voice, one pitch. So he and guitarist Jimmy Page sought assistance from Denny, who the members of Zeppelin admired. To thank her for her involvement, Denny was given the symbol on the album sleeve of 3 pyramids. The Battle of Evermore remains one of Led Zeppelin's most enduring songs. Thanks to Denny. Number 2. Behind Misty Mountain Hop. And where is that confounded bridge? Beyond the sawing riffs and rattling stomps, there was always something a little hippie-ish about Led Zeppelin. One critic memorably described lyrical detours like Misty Mountain Hop as dated flower child gibberish. Robert Plant stood his ground, presumably in bell-bottoms. The essence of the whole trip was the desire for peace and tranquility, and an idyllic situation, he told Rolling Stone in 1975. Misty Mountain Hop managed to unapologetically combine all three of these basic elements, the stomps for sure, and the sawing riff and, most certainly, the hippy-dippy stuff. Plant places himself amid a real-life July 1968 rally in London's Hyde Park, where protesters encouraging the legalization of marijuana were dispersed by police. He encourages the scattering potheads to trade in harsh city life for the bucolic freedoms of the rural Welsh countryside. Or maybe the Misty Mountains, of course. Now the crunch. And where is that confounded bridge? As things abruptly end and Plant asks, "Where's that confounded bridge?" All of a sudden it is exactly clear what he's talking about. The band didn't write a bridge into the music. A song like The Crunge would ordinarily contain a bridge, but the boys playfully left it out, self-deprecatingly accepting their inability to play any genre they like. The James Brown-inspired funk of The Crunge isn't miles off the sonic the group had established for themselves post-Zoso. Rather, it's a creative variation on a theme. Now, The Crunge isn't a bad song. It's actually great fun, and alongside Jamaica, it's one of the key examples of the use of humor in Led Zeppelin's music. Have you seen the bridge?
I ain't seen the bridge!
Where's that confounded bridge?
Number 1. Physical graffiti behind the cover. The building on the cover of Led Zeppelin's 1975 album Physical Graffiti is a physical place. It's actually two physical places. It's two apartment buildings that were built side by side at 96 and 98 St. Mark's Place in New York City, New York. The cover presents a unique feature, with internal sleeves that could be swapped out to present different scenes. One such scene is, of course, the red letters that spell out physical graffiti in each window. Another sleeve scene includes photos of notable celebrities in each window, including W.C. Fields, Laurel and Hardy, King Kong, and Buzz Aldrin. Additionally, the front side of the album jacket is a daytime scene, while the back is a night scene. Graphic designer Peter Corriston found the buildings for the cover and masterminded the artwork into existence. "We walked around the city for a few weeks looking for the right building," Corriston said in a 2008 interview about the physical graffiti art. Another little-known fact is that the St. Mark's Place buildings play a role in the musical history of another famous band, the Rolling Stones. In the Stones' 1981 Waiting on a Friend music video, Mick Jagger is filmed waiting for bandmate Keith Richards on the stoop of the famous buildings. Those changeable inner sleeves in physical graffiti served as another innovative design by Zeppelin and Corriston. You always knew the boys had something up their collective sleeves. I heard it on the X.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Beatles!
All right, Elvis has left the building.
Thanks for watching.
I heard it on the X.
Tell them you heard it on the X.